You. What up? All right. We got another one from the Y Files. The Y Files. AJ and Hecklefish. And this is the moon revealed. It's a hollow spaceship. So who built it and why? The moon revealed. The moon revealed. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about the moon. You know what I'm saying? But the dark side of the moon. What's on the dark side of the moon? Like we only see one side of the moon. Is that true? Like we only see one side of the moon at all times. We don't know what's on the dark side of the moon. But it's a hollow spaceship. A spaceship. Okay. Let's check it out. The moon revealed. Let's go.
This episode of the Y-Files is brought to you by Surfshark. Despite it being humanity's constant companion through all of recorded time, the moon is still a mystery. Science hasn't been able to explain how the moon was formed, its unusual orbit, its distance from us, its density, its composition, its structure. These are all still questions. Now, there are theories about the moon that solve some of these puzzles, but they don't solve all of them. There's only one theory that answers every scientific question about the moon. Just one. That the moon is a hollow artificial structure brought here by someone else. Let's find out why.
Ancient aliens?
Let's start at the beginning. We're taught that the moon has been here forever. But there's controversy about this because scientists can't agree on how the moon was formed in the first place. The first theory of how the moon became linked to the Earth is the capture theory. It says the moon was just floating along, drifted near the Earth, and was pulled into orbit. This is almost impossible. Another explanation is the accretion theory, that the moon and Earth formed out of dust clouds in the early solar system. But when systems form through accretion, they share similar traits. If the moon was formed this way, it would have an iron core, like the Earth. It would spin on an axis, like the Earth. But neither of these are true. The fission hypothesis was popular for a while, and this says the early Earth was spinning so fast that the moon was formed out of rock in the Pacific Ocean that was flung into space. But we later learned that moon rock is much older than the bottom of the ocean, so this is unlikely. The most popular explanation is the giant impact theory. This says that a large object about the size of Mars smashed into the proto-Earth. The debris field from the collision coalesced to create the Earth-Moon system. Again, these conditions would have to be so perfect that the odds are
astronomical.
Right. Now, a recent theory is a combination of all of these. That a large object collided with the Earth about 4.5 billion years ago, essentially vaporizing it. And this vapor is called a synestia. And the synestia was spinning very rapidly, forming a torus. And the moon formed on the edge of this torus.
Whoa, hold on. Torus? What's a torus?
Well, this shape is a torus.
That looks like a donut.
It does, but in geometry, if you revolve a circle around an axis in three-dimensional space, it's called a torus.
Yeesh, and you wonder why you're not popular at parties.
I'm very popular at parties, aren't I? So, we still don't know how the moon was created.
Who plays the fish?
You would think that actually going to the moon and collecting rock samples would solve some of these puzzles. But when moon rocks were brought back and studied, it only created more questions.
Moon rock. It seems much easier to explain the non-existence of the moon than its existence, Dr. Brett.
Since landing on the moon in 1969,
The moon landing was as fake as a teenager's Instagram.
I knew you were going to do this. Look, do you like the idea that the moon is a hollow spaceship?
Well, yeah, I gotta admit, I do kind of like this idea.
Okay, so for us to explore this theory, you need to concede that we went to the moon.
Damn.
Fine, I will concede we went to the moon.
Thank you.
But those were
For the story's
missions.
purposes.
The landings were actually filmed in a studio in Burbank, California.
Fine, I'll take what I can
Burbank.
get. Moon rocks and soil samples brought back from the moon are strange. On Earth, the newest rocks are at the surface, and the rock gets older as you go deeper. Now, this is obvious and logical. But on the moon, the soil on the surface is older than the rocks underneath. And the surface rocks are older than the rock underneath them. It's backwards. The only way this happens on Earth is when we drill, dig, and mine, bringing older material to the surface.
Oh, wow.
But we see this all over the moon. Now, if the moon was somehow hollowed out, older rock would be on top. But the list of anomalies goes on. Typical planetary structures have denser materials toward the core and lighter materials toward the surface. On the moon, this too is reversed, and no one could really explain why. The moon's surface is pockmarked by asteroid impacts that have happened for billions of years, so you would expect the rock around the impact craters to be different ages. But there is a strange uniformity in the age of these rocks. The chemical makeup of lunar dust is also very odd. If lunar dust is the result of billions of years of impacts, why does it have a different chemical makeup of the rocks around it? The moon doesn't have a magnetic field, yet moon rocks are strongly magnetized. The Earth is 4.6 billion years old, but the oldest rocks we found are much younger than that. Moon rocks are older, much older. Some rocks have been dated to the very beginning of the solar system, and some are said to be even older than that. Uranium-236 and Neptunium-237 are found on the moon. This is notable because those radioactive elements don't occur naturally. The only way we see those isotopes on Earth is if we create them. Titanium, chromium, and zirconium are rare on Earth, but these are found in abundance on the moon. If the Earth and moon were formed together, why such a big discrepancy? And those metals happen to be some of the most strongest materials that are known to exist, and they're highly resistant to corrosion. If you wanted to reinforce a structure, these are the metals you would use. This structural reinforcement could explain why moon craters all seem to be the same depth, no matter how wide they are. Shouldn't craters of different sizes be of different depths?
Yeah.
It's as if there's a resilient metallic shell just beneath the surface of the moon, preventing anything
They're all
from
the same
penetrating
depth?
further. Now, if there was some type of instruments on the moon's surface that could detect seismic activity, we could test the hollow moon theory by intentionally colliding objects with the moon.
This sounds like a setup. We did this, didn't we?
We did.
And is it hollow?
Well,
Hey-yo!
All the craters the same size? It would seem that the moon is more like a hollow than a homogeneous sphere.
after returning to the command module, the Apollo 12 crew intentionally released the lunar lander, crashing it into the moon's surface. Then something very unexpected happened. Seismic measurements showed that the moon rang like a bell and reverberated for more than an hour.
That's
This
what it
was
would
with
do.
A very small object compared to the size of the moon. So during Apollo 13, an even heavier object was crashed into the surface. This time, the moon rang for over 3 hours, and vibrations traveled to a depth of 20 miles. This doesn't happen on Earth. Reverberations last only a few minutes because of the Earth's density. And on Earth, vibrations slow down as they move toward the Earth's center, where material is denser. But the vibrations on the moon actually got faster around 40 miles down, indicating the interior of the moon is not only far less dense, but perhaps has large hollow cavities. The density of the moon is something that's difficult to explain. The moon is about 25% the size of the Earth, but it's only about 1% of the Earth's density. If the moon were a hollow shell, this would explain that. Besides the density issue, the moon has a lot of characteristics and coincidences that we don't see anywhere else. The moon is actually more like a planet than a moon. At 1/4 the Earth's size, no other object in the solar system has a moon this large. This occurs nowhere else, not in our solar system or any other solar system that we found.
Damn.
And the moon orbits much more closely than it should. And its orbit is also a mystery. It's the only object we've ever observed with a near perfectly circular orbit. We don't see this anywhere else either. Because of this near perfect orbit and its size and distance from the Earth, the moon appears in the sky as almost the exact same size as the sun. This is what allows us to have eclipses. Our distance to the sun is 400 times our distance to the moon, and the size of the sun is 400 times the size of the moon. Could this be a coincidence?
Nah.
Well, when enough coincidences pile up, we may have to adjust our thinking and be a little more open-minded. And that's what happened in 1970. 2 Soviet scientists looked at all the evidence and all these coincidences and came to what they felt was the only logical conclusion. And they agreed that their theory sounded crazy, but said not only is the moon hollow, but it's also a spacecraft that traveled here in the distant past. So now we have to ask, who built the moon?
Ancient aliens. The lunar orbiter experiment had vastly improved knowledge of the moon's gravitation field.
Every ancient culture on Earth has stories about the moon. But it's interesting that the further back you go, the fewer stories there are. And if you go back far enough, there are stories that talk about a sky before the moon arrived. Roman and Greek authors in the 5th century BC have stories about the Proselynes, and they lived in an area called Arcadia. And they said they've been here since before there was a moon in the heavens. Now, on the other side of the world, the ancient culture of Tiwanaku in Bolivia also refers to a time when there was no moon. The Tiwanaku claim the moon arrived between 11,500 and 13,000 years ago. If you're into ancient theories as much as I am, you'll recognize that this time coincides perfectly with a period called the Younger Dryas. And all kinds of myths and mysteries are said to have happened during the Younger Dryas.
Floods,
and we'll cover them on
meteors.
this channel. Now, going back to Africa, there are Zulu legends that specifically say the moon is hollow, and living inside is an intelligent race of reptilian extraterrestrials.
Lizard people?
Yup,
Lizard people built
What?
the moon!
that's what they believe.
Lizard people are very industrious.
They seem to be. The Zulu believe the moon was put
Reptilian.
into orbit by two brothers who were gods, and this legend is similar to what the Sumerians believed. The Sumerians also had a legend of two brothers, Enki and Enlil, who were called,
Anunnaki.
yup, Anunnaki, the extraterrestrial gods who created mankind.
Everything is falling into place with this one.
Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. How about this? The Zulu also believed that before the moon arrived, the climate of the Earth was very different. There were no seasons, and a blanket of thick water vapor covered the entire planet. And we now know that the moon does stabilize our climate. Without the moon's gravity, the Earth's axis would wobble. There would be no consistent seasons, no tides, extreme weather. The presence of the moon is what allows life on Earth to thrive. So back to the Zulu. The Earth was covered by a thick layer of water vapor, and you could only see the sun through this hazy mist. When the moon was finally placed into orbit, all this water vapor fell at once, and it created a cataclysmic global flood.
Always a flood.
Damn.
Always, every time. Every ancient culture has a flood myth, and there's mounting evidence that this did indeed happen during the Younger Dryas. Cultures around the world have myths that are in perfect sync with each other. The coincidences keep piling up. The Zulu legend talks about how the arrival of the moon changed the tides and stabilized the climate. And this is something that wasn't understood by science until the past 100 years. Yet somehow the ancient Zulu were able to make the connection between the moon and the tides and the seasons. All of these myths and legends, plus strange coincidences and anomalies about the moon, start to add up to a compelling theory that the moon is hollow, is artificial, and was placed here by intelligent beings long ago. But coincidences aren't proof, and myths aren't proof. We need to know what's been happening on the moon lately to see if we can make our case with hard evidence. Lucky for us, the evidence is there.
This is getting scary. The best possible explanation for the moon is observational error. The moon doesn't exist. All existence. Damn.
Science tells us that the moon is a cold, lifeless place. It has no atmosphere. There hasn't been seismic activity for millions of years. Its core, unlike the Earth's, is cold. For a supposedly dead world, there's an awful lot of activity up there. On March 7th, 1971, a cloud of water vapor appeared on the moon that covered 100 square miles, and it was there for 14 hours before it dissipated. There's not supposed to be atmosphere on the moon, but for those 14 hours, there was. In fact, 6 astronomers in the past 100 years have documented a glowing mist in the crater named Plato. The same mist, the same crater, over many years. Boulder tracks are seen on the moon, all over the place. And that's weird enough, but how do boulders roll for miles and then go uphill, like in this photo? And since the days of Aristotle, astronomers have seen strange lights appear on the surface of the moon, sometimes visible with the naked eye. NASA even reported that between the years 1540 and 1967, there were 570 sightings of light flashes on the moon that couldn't be explained. Sightings of strange lights continue to this day. The Aristarchus crater was photographed in 1992, and it shows a glowing blue light, now called the Blue Gem. And this anomaly has been seen by Earth-based telescopes every few years since. Some have even speculated it's a fusion reactor. And these events of mysterious light and mist happen so frequently that there's even a name for them: transient lunar phenomena, or TLPs. But things get even more weird.
TLP?
There are plenty of photographs of what appear to be artificial objects on the surface of the moon. Towers that reach several miles high, pyramids, symmetrical structures. These have been photographed by astronomers, probes, even the astronauts themselves. And the biggest anomaly of all? Why haven't we gone back to the moon? Sergeant Carl Wolf was working as a technician for the Air Force, and he was repairing equipment that transferred images from a lunar satellite. Those photos, according to Sergeant Wolf, showed artificial structures on the moon, what he described as a base. And this is corroborated by another technician working with Wolf. And Wolf wasn't a UFO, ET, moon theory guy. He was just a tech. He said he was excited to see the pictures on the news and have NASA explain what they were. He was surprised when the photos never turned up. The photos were found in a very early release from NASA. These structures are very large and very tall. You can even see they cast shadows. And these are photos I'd like to learn more about, but I can't. They no longer exist. Now, almost immediately after landing on the moon, the Apollo 11 crew said they saw something that shook them up. Watch the press conference they gave when they returned. These men aren't acting like they made history or had a life-changing experience.
It's a beginning of a new age.
They look sad, frightened, uncomfortable, even depressed.
Very uncomfortable.
Why? Is there a reason we haven't returned to the moon? And could it be that the Apollo missions discovered something that ancient cultures knew centuries ago? Something that reputable scientists believe is the only answer to this list of mysteries. That the moon is not what it seems or what we've been told. The moon is hollow, artificially constructed, and appeared in Earth's orbit from somewhere else, far away.
Makes sense to me.
Does it make sense to you?
It's starting to make sense. Need more proof,
So
though.
what can science explain about the hollow moon spaceship theory? Well, the formation of the moon is still unknown, so score theory 1, science 0. The density problem is said to be because after the giant impact, the Earth's upper mantle formed the moon. The mantle is much less dense than the core. Okay, the problem with this is the giant impact theory probably isn't what happened. And the theory about the Earth and the moon forming out of that big donut shape?
In geometry, that's called a torus.
Taurus. Well, that wouldn't explain the density discrepancy. We're told the moon ringing like a bell is because the moon is much less dense, and the moon's rock has much less water, so vibrations reverberate longer and farther. This can't be proven, but okay. The perfect eclipses? Well, here's where science wins.
Yeah.
The eclipses aren't exact. They're close, but not perfect.
Okay.
Besides, the moon is drifting farther away from the Earth every year, so eclipses are becoming less and less perfect all the time. And whether the moon arrived 14,000 years ago or was formed billions of years ago, it was much closer to the Earth, so it was much larger in the sky. Now, NASA claims that we know the moon isn't hollow because of seismic observations. And that's fair, but it's still conjecture. Look, we don't know for sure what's at the center of the Earth, much less what's at the center of the moon.
If there's anything at all.
Right. Now, the structures are said to be shadows or optical illusions.
Nope.
And the lights are from meteor impacts or reflections from glassy patches on the surface.
Nope.
But the bottom line is this. Yes, the hollow moon spaceship theory is a wild one, I admit that. And many of the anomalies found on the moon can be explained. The explanations aren't perfect, but they're enough to satisfy skeptics. And I consider myself a skeptic, but I'm open-minded. I just want to know the truth.
I'm not satisfied.
When I started researching this story, I thought it would be a fun ride, a pure tinfoil hat experience that we could button up with science. That's not what happened. There's just so much unknown and unexplainable that something doesn't feel right about what we've been told about the moon. But as always, the space agencies and the governments they serve are very selective about the images and information they release. So I have a message for them. For NASA, the European Space Agency, Russia, China, Elon Musk, Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, and anyone with the resources to put people back on the moon. The message is this: if you want us to believe your explanations, you're gonna have to prove it. All right, what's this?
I got a sponsor.
You've got a sponsor? Why do you need a sponsor?
That that was an interesting one. That was an interesting one. Man, why haven't we been back? Why haven't we been back to the moon? Like, I think that's the biggest question. There's a lot of questions. I mean, why are all the craters the same depth? That was, I think he got, they gave like a, I'm not satisfied by their answers, but I mean, you know, AJ said a lot of the skeptics were satisfied. I'm not satisfied. You also said like there's no other planet that has a moon of that size. The moon is 1/4 the size of Earth. Like there's no other planet with the moon that's 1/4 its size. Like we have the biggest moon in all in the whole universe. That's a little fishy right there. Then the moon orbits in a perfect circle. We have the only moon that orbits in a perfect circle. I mean, the moon stabilizes the Earth. The moon gives us seasons, the tides, and everything. The moon balances the Earth. I mean, maybe somebody put it here to do that. To do, maybe it was, you know, give the Earth a little balance, stabilize it a little bit. That's I don't know. I don't know. But I mean, you would think that people would want to find out. You would think that we would just be there. We should have bases on the moon. We should have, people should be going on trips to the moon. There should be theme parks and stuff on the moon. We landed on the moon in the 60s. What is going on? 60, 70 years ago. There's a reason why. And maybe they don't want to tell us the reason why. I mean, maybe, AJ said in order to, go along with this story, you had to believe that we actually landed on the moon to begin with. But if you don't believe that we landed on the moon, if we've never been to the moon, then we might not know what the hell it is. These moon rocks we bringing back may just be, But if you do believe that we landed on the moon and you followed this story, then you should have more. I have more questions than answers after hearing that from AJ. Like, I mean, how is the soil older at the top than it is at the bottom? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. Man, I think in one of the stories AJ was telling me, is it Ingo Swan that was remote viewing on the moon? So I think it was Ingo Swan on Earth remote viewing to the moon, and there was like neighbor or people living on the moon. Like there were people living on the moon, and you could see people and families living on the moon of some type of some type of alien. But I mean, remote viewing it, I don't know if that really can be proven. All these facts about the moon, all these anomalies about the moon, I wish they had better answers. Jesus. Because I'm starting to think the moon was put there. I don't know if it's a spaceship. I don't know if it's a hollow spaceship and people are aliens are in the spaceship or whatever. But it's seeming like maybe it was like, some type of satellite or something, the moon was put there to stabilize Earth. I'm not fully there yet. You know, but if I had to believe a conspiracy theory about the moon, that's the direction I would lean in. That is the direction I would lean in. But I still need more proof to fully lean that way. I mean, like I said, I got at this point I have more questions than answers. Man.